Hello everyone, and welcome to Game 5 of the 1972 World Chess Championship match between Boris Spassky and Robert James Fischer. Before we dive into Game 5, we do have to mention a couple of things about Game 4 and somewhat about Game 3. Now, as several subscribers have mentioned in the comments and also via email, aside from a lot of books already existing, I'm using the one by Svetozar Gligoric. Also, there is one about by Larry Evans. I also have one by Dmitry Belica about this whole encounter. Two by Dmitry Belica. That is one about Fischer and one about Spassky. There is also a book by Spassky's second Nikolai Krogius about this match, which is in Russian. Luckily, there are short bits about from this book about this encounter by Nikolai Krogius in English. A certain user translated it from Russian to English and uploaded it to chess.com. So I will put the entire diary. There will be a link in the description below, so feel free to check it out. And also there is a very nice interview with Anatoly Karpov about Fischer and amongst other things about this match. Also there will be a link in the description below to Chess Base. Saying that, it's very interesting how in Game 3, although Spassky lost that game, Fischer really played an excellent game. There was one move, that B3 move, that Spassky could have used from his home preparation to get out of everything. But as you see the quote above the board, as Karpov mentions in his interview about Boris Spassky, that he was lazy and that he didn't really work all that much on his chess. So when his seconds were showing him what to do in this situation, what to do in this situation, because they really have prepared for it. I mean, Effing Geller is one of the greatest home preparation artists of that time. But most of the times, Spassky didn't really either trust them or he didn't want to memorize the entire variation. He was just, I'm just going to find it over the board if that position ever arises over the board. So that being said, Geller was very disappointed and even angry at Spassky for losing Game 3, not because he lost, everyone can lose a game, but because he had a move that could get him out of trouble, and it was a move they found in home preparation. But Geller was like, why you do this, Spassky? And it's very interesting how Geller didn't really mind all that much that Spassky lost Game 3, but he was even more unimpressed that Spassky missed that rook to d8 move in Game 4. If you remember from my previous video, if you don't, I'll put a link to it in the description below, do check it out. In that one instance, Spassky played rook to h8 instead of first playing rook to d8 and then bringing it back to h8, just so there would be a pawn on c3 and Fischer couldn't use it to exchange queens with Spassky. And in the interview, Karpov also mentions that before their trip to Reykjavik, as you all know, Spassky's seconds are Nikolai Krogius, Effing Geller, and Livonnet, Estonian international master. All of them went to Reykjavik, but before they had a training camp. It was some 60 kilometers from Moscow, and not only them, three of them, but also Anatoly Karpov was part of this training camp. Soviet Chess Federation sent in there to, just gain experience and see how you prepare for a match, and perhaps, Spassky could use him to have some training sessions. And Karpov mentions that Spassky did wanted to have a training session with him, but they only played one game. Karpov was better in that game, but at one point, as Karpov says in the interview, he made a stupid mistake and then Spassky won the game, and Spassky was no longer interested in having a training session with Karpov. Perhaps he didn't like how the 20-year-old Karpov had a better position right out of the opening. So that being said, Karpov also mentions that Spassky was traveling a lot to Moscow and then back to the training camp, to Moscow, back to the training camp, some 60 kilometers every day, and that he didn't really spend all that much time in the training camp during his preparations for the match in Reykjavik. Karpov mentions that Spassky would only just come visit in the evenings, and as you can see in the quote above the board, they would show Spassky, okay, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen, and Spassky was like, if it happens, I'll just find it over the board. He, like I said, he wasn't really all that much into memorizing lines. And this is why Geller was so angry about Game 4, where Spassky should have taken a win with the black pieces and now continue with an even greater lead. because if you look at how things went, first game wasn't really a victory by Spassky, it was really a loss by Fischer. Second game, Fischer forfeited without even showing up. Game 3, Fischer won. Okay, it was a brilliancy, but Spassky had a reputation in home preparation. And Game 4 should have been a victory for Spassky, as it was already won during home preparation. Karpov says that Karpov was watching this game. He was not in Reykjavik, but rather he was preparing for the chess Olympiad with Petrosian, Korchnoi, Mikhail Tal and Paul Keres, and they were analyzing it, and they were like, oh, I've seen this, Spassky has this ready from home preparation, and then Spassky doesn't play it. It was very strange. But okay, this is now Game 5, and now, like we said, Game 4 was a draw, although should have been a victory for Spassky. So far, Spassky really didn't do all that much. Game 1, yes, he won by Fischer capturing on H2. Game 2, he won by forfeit. Game 3, he lost, and Game 4, he should have won, so not really going too well for Spassky. And here there is a very interesting part from Grigoric's book that I really just want to read it to you, because it's about Fischer making even more demands towards the Icelandic Chess Federation. So it's just a small bit from the book. Before the 5th game with Spassky, the rumor spread that Fischer had put 14 new demands to the Icelandic Chess Federation. He wanted to change rooms. He asked to be allowed to sign bills whenever he wanted. He wanted more pocket money than his allowance of $10 a day. A new Mercedes car, the one he was given to, was 2 years old. The option to change the playing room, a larger supply of American newspapers and magazines, personal control of filming, his own off and on switch. A chessboard with squares 1/8 of an inch smaller, the use of an indoor tennis court, and the exclusive use of the hotel swimming pool, and so on. So, of course, the Icelandic Chess Federation didn't want to really comment on this, so no one was really sure how much of this was true and how much of it was exaggerated, because at this point, pretty much anything you've heard about Fischer was either exaggerated or, blown out of proportion. But we're going to get back to this after the game, because it's very interesting. And I was also very impressed, if any of you by any chance have this book by Svetozar Grigoric in English. Here he also, there you have it, let me just check. This is how Fischer oriented himself so excellently. So I was very impressed that Grigoric uses excellently in the book. Okay, this is Game 5, let's see what happens. Sorry about the longer intro, but you can never have too much vast knowledge about anything, and especially about the 1972 World Chess Championship match. So okay, before the game, Spassky's seconds asked Spassky, does he perhaps want a rest today? Because both players were allowed a couple of rest days, and Spassky said, no, I don't want to rest, I want to fight, I have the white pieces, and I really want to play this game. I really want it to be a fighting game. And no one could really say anything to Spassky, because there were instances, before where Spassky was down in a match, he was, down in a tournament, and then he would recollect himself and just start winning games. So who was anyone to tell Spassky anything? Spassky plays d4. We have knight to f6, c4, e6, knight to c3. Here Spassky invites Fischer to go straight into the Nimzo-Indian defense, and Fischer doesn't hesitate. We have bishop to b4, the Nimzo-Indian defense is on the board, and here Spassky allows Fischer to go for any variation of the Nimzo-Indian, because Spassky is very much interested in a fight. He really wants to win a game against Fischer, especially with the white pieces, and he wants Fischer to play any line he wants. Knight to f3 by Spassky. Spassky hesitates with e3, although it was the most favorable idea at the moment, but he wants to keep his options of developing the bishop to g5. c5, now Fischer invites Spassky to play e3, thus eliminating this option of developing the bishop to g5. We have e3, knight to c6, bishop to d3, simply developing, captures. We have d6 and now e4. We have e5 by Fischer and now d5, Spassky closes the center, and knight to e7. The knight will be very useful in protecting the king side. Knight to h4 by Spassky. A very nice idea. This knight at one point is coming to f5, so Fischer, if he castles, then the knight will be very useful on f5, and if Fischer wants to eliminate it, he will have to give up his light square bishop. Here Fischer plays h6, a very nice idea. Fischer is preparing g5. He wants to prevent Spassky from at some point pushing f4. And here also we have a moment. This is only move 11, and here Spassky spends 25 minutes on move 11, and after those 25 minutes he pushes f4. And Fischer, without much consideration to the position, even though Spassky spent so much time on this move, plays knight to g6. And knight to g6 is definitely the best idea. Simply attacking that f4 pawn and also challenging the knight on h4. And now that this knight is on g6, knight to f5 no longer really works. Here Fischer can simply capture on f4, knight captures, we have knight captures on g7, but this is not so important now. King to f8, attacking the knight, bishop captures, pawn captures, and now knight moves back. Bishop captures, pawn captures, and queen to e7. And after queen to e2, captures, rook to g8. Fischer's other rook is coming to e8, and now you can see that Spassky's light square bishop isn't really all that impressive. It's caged between his own pawns, and Fischer's knight will be a very, very impressive piece once he maneuvers it to e5. So after knight to g6, Spassky has to capture the knight. Knight captures, we have f captures on g6, and now f captures on e5. Not really an important move. At some point this capture would happen, so Spassky does it now. D captures on e5, and now bishop to e3. And here, by playing bishop to e3, Fischer simply plays b6, and now you can see that Spassky doesn't really have all that much to push for a win here with the white pieces. Fischer is very solid both on the king side and on the queen side. We have castles by Spassky, castles by Fischer, and now a4. Spassky is trying to break through and in any way he can. Simply a5. Fischer completely blocks off the queen side, and now he says that there's nothing you can do. Yes, you do have the bishop pair, but your bishop pair isn't really all that impressive. My light square bishop is, on the other hand, very impressive, and my knight is very impressive and perhaps will do great things in the future. So, okay, rook to b1. A very useful move. Fischer plays bishop to d7, simply stating that the a4 pawn Spassky left isolated here is a very weak pawn, and Spassky will have to use pieces to defend it. Rook to b2. Spassky now prepares to bring the other rook over to the f-file, double rooks on the f-file, and perhaps try something there. We have rook to b8, and here comes rook b to f2, as planned. Here we have queen to e7 by Fischer. You have to be careful not to blunder with queen to c7, because you do have to keep an eye on the h6 pawn. For example, bishop captures would be very uncomfortable for black. G captures, and now you can simply capture on f6 as the pawn is no longer guarding the knight on f6. Here white would simply snatch a pawn and keep a better position. So queen to e7 by Fischer. We have bishop to c2. Now improving the position, also bringing another defender of the a4 pawn, and also creating some room for the queen on d3. And here Fischer can simplify immediately, and if he wants, he can play knight to g4, and this would be at least a draw for him. For example, captures, you simply exchange all the rooks. Now queen to e2, captures, and now after g5, the queen is coming to f4, and it's a better position for black, but white cannot win this game. There's no way. But Fischer isn't really interested in just drawing the game yet. He wants something more. So first he pushes g5. And okay, we have bishop to d2. Spassky is planning this maneuver bishop to d2 to e1, and at some point he would very much enjoy if this bishop could come to g3. This would be very nice. Maybe he could create some threats against the d5 pawn. Queen to e8, and now comes bishop to e1. Queen to g6, and now comes queen to d3. A very nice move. The queen is now adding further protection to the e4 pawn. Also, Spassky is now even considering queen to g3. Knight to h5. At some point, the rooks are getting exchanged, so why not to do it now? And this knight is now definitely coming to f4. We have rook captures on f8, rook captures, and king captures. The rooks are now off the board, and here we have bishop to d1. A very nice move, attacking the knight, and also making the room for queen to come to b1 to perhaps force Fischer's queen to stay on the 6th rank, as she will have to keep an eye on the b6 pawn. Fischer simply plays knight to f4, and once again Spassky found himself in time trouble, and here on move 27 he makes a critical mistake. Here he should have continued with queen to b1, although Fischer still keeps a better position, but instead he played queen to c2. For some reason probably decided to keep his queen with a better defense of the king side, but this move loses immediately. So feel free to pause the video here and play the move that Fischer played to win this game 5 of this historic match. I'll give it a couple of seconds for you to decide as usual. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are an excellent player. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, here Fischer simply played bishop captures on a4, and when Spassky saw this, he simply resigned the game. Why did he resign? Well, obviously, can you capture the bishop? It seems like the bishop is unguarded. If you capture the bishop, queen captures on e4 and there is no defense. Either queen captures on e1 will be checkmate, or queen captures on g2 will be checkmate. You can't stop both. You can prolong the game for a bit by running away with the king, but still it's checkmate in 4. There's no way out of it. Simply knight to d3 check, king moves, queen to h4 check, king moves, queen to f4 check, king moves, and now knight to c1, a beautiful knight checkmate. And on the other hand, after bishop to a4, if you don't capture the bishop, if you simply move the queen, although there really aren't all that many squares for the queen, simply bishop captures on d1. Queen captures, and now queen captures on e4. Again, threatening checkmate, you have to prevent this. Let's say queen to d2, and now simply knight captures on g2. White is down so much material. Queen captures, and now queen captures on d1 with check. Queen has to block, only move, you exchange queens, and being up 3 pawns, it would be a very easy win for Fischer. So yeah, such a move hidden in the position. Spassky, Spassky of course could have drawn this game at many times during the game. But as he was looking for ways to win, a simple threat like bishop captures on a4 can often sneak up on you. So yeah, that's game 5. I do hope you enjoyed it, and remember when we said in the beginning we were reading parts from Gligorich's book about Fischer's demands towards the Icelandic Chess Federation. Now, it's hard to say how many of them were true, how many of them were exaggerations, but Fischer did celebrate after this game. The hotel swimming pool did close at 10 p.m. and Fischer spent 2 hours alone in the swimming pool as celebration for winning game 5 against Boris Spassky. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed preparing it, as I really enjoy preparing all of these games for you. I would like to thank Kenneth Guerin, Julian Bosch, Martin Wilbur, Chris Picard, and Robert Sabochanes for a contribution to my channel, and many more of you, as yesterday 16 people contributed to my channel, but I only have room for 5 people per video, but don't worry, all of you will have your rightful place in my chess videos. So yeah, once again, I really hope you enjoyed it. Check out the links, the interview with Karpov, the short bits from the diary by Nikolai Krogius, and a lot of other useful links. There will be a link to Game 4 if you missed it by any chance. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon with the legendary Game 6. Or if you have any good suggestions from the Batumi Chess Olympiad, feel free to #suggestion me. Thank you all, and I'll see you soon.